this and that and what the fuck else, episode 110. Now, those that are followers of the channels know that these programs are a collection of news tidbits that I pick up as I serve the sources that I use. And I'm trying to bring the stuff to you that the mainstream media will not easily publish. And I just want to make something clear. Today I was in a firefight on Twitter. One guy insinuated that my source, my sole source of information is RT, which is absolute bullshit. I use RT from time to time, and you can see in the way I make my clips that I reveal my sources on most of them. Some of them the sources are not there because I have to crop and get the stuff in, but most include the sources, and I use about, I think it's 9 independent news channels on Telegram, and they are pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian channels. And I scan through the stuff and see what each one of them has to say, and most of the items that I use in these programs of mine is stuff that is reported on both channels. Yes, I do have a bit of bias towards the Russians, and as I said to the guy on Twitter this morning, that he accused me of being pro-Russian. And I said, yeah, I do what I do and I publish what I publish because the other side of the coin is readily available on your TV and in the newspapers and most of the mainstream websites. So why do I need to duplicate whatever they are saying? I'm doing specifically what I'm doing because of the bias in the mainstream media. And he made a few other insinuations, and he referred to my following and things like that, and I actually kept my cool with the oak, and there was a few times that I really felt like just responding with a fuck off, but I resisted the temptation and I engaged him, and eventually the responses that he started posting was, as I said in one of my posts, he reminds me of a guy staying in Pretoria supporting the Western Province, and he keeps on telling you why Western Province is a good team. Meanwhile, on the field there, the Blue Bulls are trashing the Western Province. But that was just a joke, and I really am amazed how solidly the brainwashing has been done on some people. But enough of that shit. Let's look at this piece of art. And if you look at this image, this is an excellent image. Now, I'm just going to mention a few things. Look at that image from the left or look at it from the right. Although that opening in the mountains at the back draws your eye, you cannot look at it without looking at that little girl. And then, this is important for me. Try and imagine that little girl's thoughts as she sits there with that oar in the water. Try and imagine her thoughts. I can assure you she's not thinking, I love this piece. And that's the beauty of art. It makes you think after you have looked at it properly. And then we get to the pestilence. And look at this disturbing information. US life expectancy reaches 25-year low, according to the CDC. Life expectancy for US citizens born in 2021 sits at 76.4 years, down over 2 years from 2019. I wonder why. And then you look at this map, and it is deeply disturbing. Died suddenly. The green dark is most heavily vaccinated. You will see a major decline in these populations over the next 5 to 10 years. But look carefully at that map where that decline is going, and look what is left. We are going to see a tectonic shift within the next 5 years. And the ridiculousness just does not. Died suddenly. The government excuses are getting sort of silly. Artificial sweetener behind spike in sudden deaths, heart attacks, experts claim. Now they've claimed it is excessive exercise, they've claimed it was climate change, they've claimed so many things. And I made a tweet earlier in which I said, what if that jab did not make it impossible for you to feel that you have been conned? That would explain the lack of outrage. And then one guy responded and he said, but that's natural. Usually, the bigger the fuck up you make, the more the denial. And then we get to this question. Why is there so much evidence and never any prosecutions? Answer. Because the true owners of our world, the corporate oligarchs, simply have one of their alphabet agencies seal the documents until all guilty parties are long dead. Yep, that is how it works. I am truly astounded by the lack of severe punishment for these pushers of that jab. And then we get to the Donbass. During the shelling of Donetsk, a woman's head was blown off. In the new European world, aggression against Russians blossoms brightly because Russian soldiers are now liberating Ukraine from Nazi rule. And at the same time, pro-American news sources do not talk about the endless shelling of Donetsk. Moreover, the Ukro-fascists hit exactly those places where there are large concentrations of civilians. Shame on the Kiev government. I say shame on the collective West. And it is the collective West, citizens and taxpayers, that are supporting this. And then there's this disturbing post from Patrick Lancaster. Shelling of the cathedral in the center of Donetsk. Patrick Lancaster, a freelance American journalist and former US Navy sailor, says, Ukraine shelled the Cathedral of the Transfiguration in the center of Donetsk. My eldest child was baptized here. Someone must stop them. Now, from what I have read, what is going on the battlefield, the Russians are slowly but surely grinding the Ukrainians up. That Russian war machine is moving slowly and carefully because they want to avoid civilian deaths. But the Nazis don't care. But slowly but surely, street by street, house by house, the Russians are smoking them out. I don't think it's going to be long before that portion close to Donetsk city is cleared. And when Bakhmut falls, the Ukrainians are going to be in deep shit. And then we get to the energy. Germany is burning coal to generate energy at the fastest pace in the last 6 years. At the moment, more than a third of electricity in Germany is generated by coal-fired power plants. In the third quarter of 2022, this type of generation increased by 13.3% compared to the same period in 2021. Very environmentally friendly, especially given the fact that coal is the dirtiest source of energy. But Germany never really cared. It's worth recognizing that coal consumption in this country has been growing for several years. And the latest is, with a lot of bribes paid by Joe Biden and other people in Europe, this absolutely idiotic, corrupt ANC government has sold our country out. They took the bribes and now they provide the coal to Europe, and our own power stations are starving. This shit must stop. South Africa needs a regime change and needs it fast, and this fucking republic must go. It must be demolished. And more from Germany. Germany becoming dysfunctional state. Germany faces a serious risk of going bankrupt due to the government's inability to find a variable solution to the current energy crisis. The Vice President of the Bundestag, Wolfgang Kubicki, said in an interview published in the national newspaper Bild on Sonntag. According to the official, Germans now have the impression that their country is on the way to become a dysfunctional state. Infrastructure, energy prices, and the inability of the Bundeswehr, the country's armed forces, to protect us are challenges that require immediate action from the German authorities. Otherwise, things will go wrong, he said. Well, I think he's a bit late. Things has gone wrong to such an extent that Germany doesn't have the money to fix it. They also don't have the time. And their industries are leaving their shores, moving to America, successfully stolen by the Americans, and moving to China, because China can supply them with raw materials and energy. And then there's this little thing. You can stop the video if you want to read all that. But this is just an article to talk about the way that Russia is changing its trade routes to Asia. New routes via Iran will save thousands of kilometers. That's interesting. The world is really changing. And then we get to this ugly fucking thing. Immigration in Europe. Why the difference? Sweden, 236 bombings in 11 months, 78 rapes per 100,000 people. Hungary, 0 bombings, 3.9 rapes per 100,000. Poland, 0 bombings, 3 rapes per 1,000 people. And why would that be? Could it be for the simple reason that Hungary and Poland refused to take any of those immigrants that flooded into Europe? I am sure that is part of the answer to this. And then we get to this hilarious fuck up in America. This Governor Abbott loaded some buses with immigrants on Christmas Day, and he dropped them on Christmas Day in front of Kamala Harris's house. Biden condemns Greg Abbott's migrant buses to Kamala Harris's home. Cruel, dangerous and shameful stunt. But there was commentators that said Texas is struggling under the load of the illegals and Biden doesn't want to do anything about it. They have just now again voted for a massive amount of money to go to the Ukraine and fuck all to secure the American border. The Americans should ask themselves what the hell is going on. Why are these liberals allowing America to be flooded? And then we look at this cartoon, and this cartoon is very disturbing. Look at that thing. The most offensive thing about this cartoon is that it is all true. You've got Nigel Farage here what says, what the hell is going on? Then look there on the left, what that Tory is doing to that little boy. And Labour has got a blindfold on and he's telling Nigel, don't be a racist. And on that table, that multiculturalism shit, look at what is happening there. It is sickening. And then this guy screams, that's my daughter. And the policeman says, all right, you're under arrest for disturbing the peace. And then this woman, I can't recognize her, says, and we at Social Services are taking your daughter away to protect her from you. It is fucking sickening. But that is what's going on in the UK. And then you get to this. 4 Arab migrants arrested over gang rape of a Swedish woman, 50, at a park. The victim told the police they surrounded her and encouraged each other as they filmed their barbaric act. All have recently obtained Swedish citizenships and therefore cannot be deported, says the court. What the hell is that? The European citizens better wake the fuck up. Their government systems are geared to destroy them. And then more from Sweden. I thought Swedes were all blonde-haired and blue-eyed. There goes that fantasy. And it was this lot of dark-skinned migrants that were overturning that police van. I am dumbstruck at what's happening there. And then you get to this. 9-year-old Luna is awarded 7,000 euros in damages after being injured for life. 9 years old. The double rapist, one of the women for 17 hours, Damir Al-Ali, received 9,000 euros for being detained 3 hours without a lawyer. Avoided deportation to Syria due to risk of military service. The number one priority of a country should be to protect the interests of its native citizens. If the Western governments are allowing these attacks, then the citizens must take the law into their own hands. And that is the reality. Europe is in deep shit, and you're not going to get out of it without a fight. But your woke men running around in women's underwear and shit and don't know what a woman is. I don't know that. I believe they can't protect you. And then there's this. Mostly peaceful, illegal migrants are literally destroying Europe. Look at that. Look at that image. Look at that sea of faces. Those are not Europeans. And then there was this disturbing piece from Enoch Powell. We must be mad, literally mad, as a nation to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents, who are for the most part the material of the future growth of the immigrant-descended population. It is like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral pyre. And how true is that? And then I've got this for all those guys that are making a big story about how China is using surveillance on its citizens. Look at this map. This is Europe. And then you look at the surveillance cameras densities. And it's quite informing. I saw an article about a guy making a big story about the access control at a supermarket. And he was making a hell of a thing about it. The reality is, access control is not something new or strange. And then we look at this map, and it's quite fucking disturbing. More than half of the world's homicides occur in only 6 countries. The red countries, 210,568 total homicides, and the grey countries 204,000. That's less than, look at that, red countries. And I have to say, South Africa is most probably the number 1 contributor. And then we get to something that is very close to my heart, and this is that fuck up in Yemen, and NATO is involved in this shit. The US and UK support for military operations in Yemen have received significant attention recently due to the reports of strikes that damaged or destroyed hospitals, schools and other infrastructure vital to the civilian population. War crimes. And then the EU has the fucking audacity to set up a court system, and they want to try the Russians for war crimes. This is what they are doing in Yemen, killing thousands of people. They killed thousands in Libya. They killed thousands in Syria. They killed thousands in Iraq. But yet, they want to take Putin to court. The West is on its final legs. The rest of the world has had enough of them. The Western powers has killed millions of people. Millions. Brutally slaughtered civilians. Innocent women and children. And they want to talk about Russia. I follow the Russians very closely on the channels. And I see horrific videos, images that I can never share. And I can tell you, the perpetrators are the Ukrainians in that war. They are the ones that are doing the brutal things to civilians. The Russians are fighting carefully. The fucking Ukrainians don't even take their dead and wounded away from the battlefield. The Russian commanders give them a ceasefire to come and collect their wounded and dead. They don't do it, they just leave them there. And then there's that story of that crowd that came in with that American Mozart group that are doing organ harvesting on the front line there. And there are rumors that they are taking organs out of soldiers that are still alive. Think about that. And then we get to that what a fuck moment, and this is actually nauseating, but I think applicable at this time. Look at that. Just look at that. See, that wasn't so bad. Now let's get you that $47 billion. And on that, please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.